What can we say about our first feature reader guest tonight, other than we know him and we love him as Bob Frankow, with his usual insightful, inquisitive inquirings into the inner workings of politics and its intersections with religion and philosophy and good old common sense. Tonight, Bob treats us to his alter ego, is that right, of Joe Lunchbucket. The plight of the common man as seen by, well, a common man. With his hickory-dickory dock doggerel, here is Joe Lunchbucket.
I should start out with parental guidance on this. This is not all politically correct. Foreman is barbecuing steaks for his crew to celebrate 1-year accident-free award. Slogans are posted on blackboard denoting the means that enabled them to achieve this. Research and development. Development of work practices and accident investigations. WCB-SM, WCB safety meetings, and PHSL. Foreman asks, "What the hell's that?" The guy that wrote it said, "Pure horseshit luck." The next week, someone broke a leg. M&B top brass visit Franklin River, their biggest logging division. The union committee member that's touring them around the operation saw a golden opportunity to hit them up for a pension that the IWA didn't have yet. One of the executives introduced himself as the company bean counter. He said, "We negotiate wage rates with unions and don't care if the money goes in workers' wage pocket or pension pocket. We're just concerned with the bottom line. You want indexed pension? Work for government at half rate." Union meeting heated up when a member that scabbed during a strike tried to get elected on committee. Another union member said, "On a point of information, this man scabbed on mechanics when they went on work stoppage. Do we want a scab like that on our committee?" The silence was deafening. The guy got 2 votes. Majority opinion in barroom discussion was that all RC priests were gay. One person voiced doubt, asking, "Do you mean that the Pope and Dalai Lama are queer too?" Port Alberni's red alderman that has a street named after him resorted to taking the name of the Lord in vain. He said, "I'd be goddamn surprised if they weren't." Contract fallers could make more money on steep ground just falling and not running down the hill to buck them. But full-length trees made bringing them to landing difficult. Quality control soup comes in the bus to do lunch with the fallers, and one of them accuses him of persecution. The soup says, "Bill, you're one of our best fallers, but this time I heard you bucked one of your trees, and I wanted to witness the blessed event." The con on the crew was taking a holier-than-thou position on religious discussion. One of the genuine believers asked, "You mean you believe in God?" The con was flabbergasted and said, "Why, of course I do." The true believer says, "Then how can you be such a goddamn liar?" The braggart in the crew labeled the new general foreman a pompous ass. His own partner asked if that supervisor had taken a leaf out of his book. Before union organizers were eliminated or blacklisted, today they just buy them. A favorite ploy of management was to remove a competent member of the union grievance committee. They dangle the bait, and if the candidate swallows the hook, they reel the fish in. One of the crew had just returned from a failed stint on staff and went on compensation for back trouble. Back problems had been faked, and one of the crew quizzed, "Can you get compensation for hurt pride?" Polish, German, and Lithuanian DPs are having lunch. Paul says he came from a conquered country for a better life in Canada. Hun says his country lost WW2 and he too came. Lithuanian says, "I'm a proud Lithuanian and I came to Canada to get away from the Reds." The Pole and Hun look at each other and ask, "What the have you got to be proud of?" The Hun made the first cut. "Tell me one thing Lithuania is famous for." Lithuanian groped for an answer, and the Pole tried to help out. "Well, there's that famed gay writer that stood behind your brother in the picture you showed us." A favorite supervisor stopped off at another foreman's house on the way home for a Christmas drink. Leaving, he neglected to manually turn on his pickup lights and got stopped, breathed on the cop, and failed the breathalyzer. His lawyer delayed the court, but warned that he will lose his license for 1 year. He confided with crew, saying management was going to dismiss him. His guys cautioned him to watch out when he goes back to the road because the rain has made going down the hills very slippery. Despite dire warnings, the inevitable occurred. He slid down the steep hill, injuring his back, bruising hip and shoulders, and was on WCB. Predictably, his injuries healed in 1 year, just when manager was getting the boot. Our soup told him, "Life is full of twists. Last year you wanted to fire me, and this year you're gone." One of the crew possibly suffered from depression because he had highs and lows, and a supervisor said, "That guy has periods." When a foreman had mouthed a union member without him there, the crew would generally stick up for him. And surprisingly, one guy that had a few run-ins with him said in defense, "That guy will never have piles." There's a lull, and then someone asks, "What the hell do you mean?" "Well, he's a perfect asshole." New scaler drove in to dine with guys for company. He said he just came from scaling a faller, and he wouldn't name, and he was going to yell to ensure it was safe to go in, but didn't bother because he heard some talking. He walked in unannounced and saw Fowler pointing the power saw at a tree, saying, "You're next." And looking at the adjacent snag, he said, "And I'll get you too, you bastard." It was sometime after this that the term "smart like tree" came into usage. Company launched a quit smoking campaign, and the mantra was, "I can purify my lungs by inhaling only fresh air, and I have the willpower to quit smoking." An ardent supporter of the program said, "This could work." His falling partner said, "It might work for some, but it won't work for you." Everyone asked, "Why not?" Answer, "Because you know that you are such an effing liar that you won't believe yourself." Everyone is talking about priests diddling young boys, inferring that all priests are gay. One ex-RC says that he must have been homeliest in the parish because he was an altar boy for 2 years and never got altered. His work partner pats him on the shoulder saying, "Hey, I'd lie about it too." Fowler with Trapline was telling crew that skinning a cougar took skill because one slip of the knife could devalue a valuable pelt. one of his detractors that harbored a grudge against him for shooting a friend's dog said, "Oh yeah, but you get pretty good at it practicing on dogs." That ended the skinning lesson. One of the young guys makes a snide remark about the senior workers getting all the gravy jobs, while the new hires get tough stuff. The older guy takes personal affront and says to this kid, "I knew your dad when you were still jumping from nut to nut trying not to be a bastard, and you never did make it, did you?" Biggest put down in Franklin River. One of the crew of the communist persuasion usually brought up social issues. The conservative in the bunch was tiring of his daily red tirade and challenged his veracity. "Oh, you know 2/3 the cube root of sweet bugger all, and only spout what your wife winds you up on when she gets you off in the morning." The red ruptured an artery and bled. "You're nothing but the result of a drunken..." Yeah. Should everyone have as much faith in elected officials and priests as a Jewish Dutch businessman that entrusted his shoe stock to a Dutch citizen in WW2 Holland under German occupation? The Dutch gent felt honored that this rich Jewish neighbor put so much trust in him. Months after war's end, the Jew stock merchant failed to appear. The Dutchman checked his stock and found that all the shoes were for the left foot. If believers put as much faith in clergy as that shrewd Jewish cobbler had in Gentiles, would anyone tithe without proof of afterlife? And would we recall MLAs if they didn't deliver what they promised? Clarence, our retired alky on the job, was on an AA missionary spree since his conversion. Barry, still struggling with his addiction, is this old zealot's target for proselytizing. Barry tires of his gospel persecution to bring him to the light, and finally asks Clarence if he has any nude pictures of his own wife. Clarence is disgusted and answers, "Why the hell would I have any of those?" Barry answers, "Do you want to buy some?" John, our esteemed logger and brain trust for the division, is sent to different sites to lend his expertise to make the whole operation run smoothly. John talks logging with Toastmaster ease, but stutters badly when he veers from his profession. He starts telling a joke on the bus ride home, and just as we're almost in town, he stutters so badly at the punchline that he stammers, I'll tell you tomorrow." Isaac, our socialist, gets so carried away in political discussions that he either forgets to get off at his house or carries on until he wins the argument and has to phone his wife to pick him up when they arrive at his adversary's home. A faller was disturbed about getting screwed out of 2 holidays during a long absence, even though the master agreement clearly stated the absence was too long. He threatened to withhold his best efforts and would go out of his way to make his supervisor look bad. The soup says, "You can't say that. I'm going to take you to the office." The faller says, "You got any witnesses?" Supervisor says, "Of course, Norm, your partner here." Norm pipes up, "What did you say?" I dropped off the work crew and spotted one of our old-timers that retired early to take up his battle with the bottle full-time. It had been a few years since I saw him not staggering sober, and I stopped at the bus and asked if he was all right. He hopped in, we chatted, and I asked where he lived now. That was the wrong question. He didn't know where he lived, and I had to get to the police to take my Alzheimer partner home. Bus driver dropped fallers off at their homes. One of the guys would get off at different houses close to where he lived. The driver was invited to his home after that and asked why he did this. He said, "You'll find out." Sunday morning, just before church, but most of the crew didn't attend, driver got a knock on the door. Still bleary-eyed from the night before, one of the scalers, an ex-Army career bartender, paid him a visit with his little daughter in tow. A wife treated the little girl to hot chocolate and cookies and offered coffee. The scaler retorts, "Is that all you got?" It was folklore that the best loggers were Swedes and native Indians, and the Jippo contractors said their best men were Alkies. They claimed that after a town drunk, they wouldn't even work the first day, but the second day and until they built up their stake, you couldn't find better crews. They didn't just exhibit their skill, but it seemed that they gave it their all to prove to themselves and anyone else that they were men and not just drunks. Logger sports were starting, and the only faller in the bus was asked if he was entering any of the events. He said he thought of entering the chainsaw filing contest, but decided against it. Why not, someone asked. The faller said that he was not the best, but only the second best filer in camp. "Well, that should be good enough to enter." The faller replied, "You don't get the picture. There's 30 fallers in camp, and 29 are the best filer in camp. One guy said that he wasn't prejudiced, but he didn't think it was right that some ethnic racists pooled their money to buy real estate. Since I was the meathead and this Archie Bunker's target, I asked him how the corporation we all worked for got their money to employ people, and who would he rent from if no one invested in rentals. My partner sitting next to me whispers, "Boy, you sure let him down easy."
Hey, thank you, Bob.
Okay.
Okay. Bob, don't go anywhere. It's time for your question and answer session, should you want one. Does anybody have a question for Bob? Our wonderful time-traveling writer. He takes us way back in time before COVID. Back to a time when you could actually get away with saying stuff like that, right? Any questions? You've stunned us all again, Bob. I think that's it. So let us move on.